All the parts of the board.
Soon. All right, go.
Can you hear us in chambers?
Or I can.
I can out here.
Got it now.
What are we doing to Jody?
Thank you, Jody, for
Giving myself a heart attack.
Okay, thank you for your patience. It's about almost 5:45. I'm going to open the meeting. Tucker Whitman,
Here.
Andy Dennison,
Present.
Ben Vitale,
Present.
Chris Petras,
Here.
Paul Pinkney,
Here.
Keith Batman,
Here.
Hans Petcher,
Here.
Mark Strong,
Here.
Heidi Nightingale, Elaine Daly,
Here.
Trisha Kerr, here, Timothy Lattimore,
Somewhat.
Michael Didio,
Here.
Ryan Foley,
Present.
Aileen McNabb Coleman. Present. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. Before we begin, this evening, I'm going to be presenting with the help of Lynn, the 2022 tentative budget. This has been a work that has involved the help from department heads, staff here on the 6th floor, and of course, Lynn, our budget director, to help put this together for you today. I want to thank everyone here for being here in person. That's very helpful. You'll receive your books following the presentation. I want to I see some newly elected folks in the audience. Thank you for being here today too, and to learn about the budget and what you have to look forward to in the upcoming year. So, and congratulations. I'm going to start with my opening message. It's the same message you'll find in the very front of your binder. This will give you some indication of what we are going to be presenting today, and then we'll go through the series of slides. So it starts out with, dear fellow Cayuga County legislators, this year has been one full of challenges and opportunities. While Cayuga County continues to live and operate under the weight of the COVID-19 pandemic, simultaneously, we're experiencing an unprecedented stream of funding. Our employees and residents continue to sacrifice and remain inconvenienced under the strain of COVID-19. Every single person has suffered or is suffering some level of trauma that should never be minimized. I'm presenting a budget that does not add additional burden to our residents. This tentative budget contains a proposed 0% tax rate while addressing capital needs, department restructuring, and further investment in resources for constituent use. Attached to this note is the 2022 tentative budget for your review. This document is the work of our department heads, Cayuga County Budget Director, and myself as Acting Budget Officer. There have been many requests from departments and partner agencies this year in juxtaposition to the pressures from nearly 6% increase of health insurance, increased expenditures due to the Department of Social Services needs, and the needs for more immediate capital investment. This budget is based on a flat 0% property tax, while the tax cap for 2022 is estimated to be approximately 4%. This translates to an effective tax rate decrease of 5.9% to individual taxpayers. It has a budgeted draw on the fund balance of approximately $2 million, $800,000 of which is for capital improvements of new roofs to 2 county buildings. Cayuga County has had a strong sales tax performance above expectations in 2021, which has allowed me to provide these investments without raising taxes. The 2022 county budget is responsible and provides for ongoing operations of the county. This budget does not contain any American Rescue Plan funding and only contains operational costs. Thank you to the employees and the department heads for their continued dedication to the residents of our county. So with that, we're going to get into our slides and share with you kind of some exciting decisions we've made. So our budget goals. A flat property tax, which meant the 0% increase. This is something that I feel very strongly about. As I mentioned in the forward, our residents have been through enough. We've had unprecedented funding. We have an increase of sales tax. I didn't want to pass any burden on to our residents. Feel like this is a very important goal to have for this year's budget. And I hope that you'll keep that in mind as you are doing your work on the budget. Certainly, this remains below the tax cap. The cap is estimated at 4%. We are continuing to manage fund balances per county fund balance policy. We're investing in capital projects. And we have some strategic investments in county operation. And there's 4 areas I wanted to touch on with you folks. The health department, there's been an awful lot of grants going through the health department and a lot of extra administrative work. So the position that I'm going to be presenting to you, I will discuss later, but it helps free up some work in those areas. In addition, the sheriff's department, he's seen an increase as well in some needs in his department. IT is looking towards some restructuring, and the Parks Department as well is looking toward restructuring, and we'll get into that in a later slide. Okay, I'm going to pass it up to Lynn.
So this slide shows the summary of our spending and our revenues in the proposed budget. The total spending for all funds is $160 million. We have revenue sources that will make up $8 million. And there is also a fund transfer from the A fund to the highway fund for $7 million. We are proposing to use $2.1 million from the A fund and $863,000 from the D fund, that would be the highway fund. And we're actually, almost flat with the DM fund. We're actually adding about $6,000, which is pretty much flat. And this is proposing the property tax levy would be $42,314,000, which is the same as what we had in 2021. This is just showing you a graph of history of what the tax levy has been over time, the property tax levy, the dollar amount. So as you can see, it's certainly has had a steady increase over time. A few years was a little bit larger. Some years we've been doing a really good job, I think, of keeping it relatively flat and minor increases, and then we're proposing to keep it flat for the next year. We can just discuss a couple of the budget pressures, some expenditures that were increasing. The first is we have had an increase in health insurance, which is to be expected, 5.9%, which isn't bad at all. We actually have had a very good performance. A lot of it has been due to less health services were rendered in 2020. That kept things down. We've also had a decrease in large claimants. We went a couple of years that were bad for us, where we had a real good history for a lot of years. So we were having a good year again, and we don't have a lot of large claimants. So that's helping, and we're doing whatever we can to offer some different options to keep expenditures down. The college and the city both have a lot of people participating now in the Medicare Advantage program, so that helps keep those claimants out of the insurance also. So that was some good news. We have had large increases in foster care expenditures. You'll note that when you get into the details of the budget a little bit more. We've had a lot of placements in institutions. That's really where the expenditures are coming from. We have some children in institutions that are costing $15,000 to $20,000 a year. So it's not the number of placements that have really gone up. It's just we've had some severe, and some of that has escalated, we think, during COVID. mental health issues, and just other things. So that's something that social services will be focusing on to come up with more preventive services to help to maybe reduce that going into next year. We have contractual, typical increases on salaries with union and non-union employees. So that just in the steps that people get to. So that's always going up every year. We have included some capital investment in the budget, which is to put some roofs on the public safety building and the Hardenberg building. There were some priority projects that Gary had pointed out and requested. So we did include them to just put them right in the budget. We've had some increased costs in the preschool program, about $300,000. They, one of our major places that the children go to here in Cayuga County would be the Gabber Center, and they did change from having a half day of preschool to a full day of programming. So the cost really hasn't driven up there, but what's happened is we've had some children having to go to other schools, more of them. So our transportation costs have come up. And then we've had obviously more people having to attend a full day program, and then you still have other kids going to the half day instead of some going to half and half. So that has driven those costs up, and that is a mandated program that the county does have. We have also seen a decrease in Dmv revenue. There just has been a little bit less activity, going on down there, and the projection will show up for this year, and then we can reduce the budget for next year for that. There were some good news, of course. So the biggest one would be the increase in sales tax. I've increased the budget $2.3 million. We're projecting sales tax to come in at around 27 million in 21, and we only had 23.2 budgeted. So we're budgeting 25.5 in the 2022 budget. So it's to be a little bit conservative. We're not putting it up to the level of what we're going to get in 2021 because it's really hard to project. This is just going to be a real high year. But with, there's still a lot of pressure on purchasing and sales, and inflation is still there. So obviously we collect sales tax. That's what the price is. So, if it turns around quickly, we think that's a pretty good number. We also were able to budget a decrease in Medicaid expenditures. We've been receiving enhanced federal revenue, which really just reduces our expenses. We pay Medicaid every week. We have a weekly share we have to pay. So when extra federal money comes in, they reduce our payment. So I was able to reduce the budget by $600,000. We actually have savings of over $1 million in the current year because of this enhanced revenue that has come in to the county. So we're only guaranteed it through March of 21 at this point. So that's how we budgeted it, but that could also be something that we get a little benefit from in the rest of the year, depending on how things go. We've also had a decrease in the New York State retirement contribution percentage. That is set by the state. They tell us, what the contribution will be for next year. So overall, it's saving us about $700,000 if that contribution is going to drop for the next year. So just a little bit about the fund balance. As we said, we're budgeting 2.1 million in the A fund. Of that, you can kind of say it represents a good $800,000 that we included as expenditures. So we're, even though that might be a bigger number than you're used to seeing, almost half of it is for capital investment that we haven't had previously in the budget. I'm estimating that the fund balance will probably be at least 22 million at the end of 2021. And with using the 2 million that we were proposing would bring us down to 20 million. And the fund balance policy that we have is that our fund balance should be 10 to 15% of the gross revenues of the county. And that calculation would be that our fund balance should sit between 14 and $21 million. So we're still in a very good place if we have a $10 million fund balance. This is just a graph depicting for you over time the amount of fund balance that we've used in the budget. So this isn't actuals of how it ended up turning out. This is how we budgeted it. So, we were using a lot of it before. We got to a point where we're using a lot less. Now we're proposing to, spend a little bit more of it, but we're reinvesting it in things that we haven't been really budgeting in the last couple of years to actually spend. this is just a depiction for you, if you want to see, where your revenue sources are, to fund the government operations that we have. You can see the largest piece of the pie is the property tax. The next is the sales tax that we receive. And then after that, state aid and fees would be anybody paying you a different source. So that would be include Medicaid. So when mental health gets the revenue in, those would be fees. A lot of our departments have small fees that they charge people, but most of them don't have any significant amounts of fees. And then the federal aid. And that federal aid is probably almost all of it is in social services that they've received, the bulk of the federal aid that the county receives. Here's just a graph view to show you the sales tax performance versus the actual. The yellow would be the budget and the gray would be the actual sales tax that we've received. And I've included the projection for 2021 up there. So historically, we are outperforming it. And even in the years that we didn't, it wasn't very big, significant differences. So, we've been tracking pretty well. Like we said, this is an unprecedented year in 21 and 20, we held strong when we thought we weren't going to, we're going to have a big loss of sales tax. We actually beat the budget. So that again was unexpected at the time. Just another quick graphic for you to see that the different funds, the A, which is the general fund, the D is the highway, the DM is the road and machinery, also related to the highway, just so you could see what are the fund balances projected at the end of 21. As I said before, 22 million for the A. The D, 2.8 million. It actually went up significantly last year, I think, because we weren't able to get some projects, obviously because of COVID. We just weren't able to do things. So we've done a lot of spending, and we actually got a lot of CHIPS money. So we've been doing a lot of paving and a lot of highway spending. The DM is a little bit lower at 275. That's why we're not proposing to take anything from that. Here's another depiction for you of the expenditures that the county has. The category of other is really the program expenditures that are not. I've identified Medicaid for you to see how big of a slice of pie that one program itself is. Salaries and fringe benefits, that's your staff. It's another significant portion of what our expenditures are. And then the college we have pulled out another bigger amount, and the debt service, that's for our loans. And other would be everything else, all your contractuals, all your contracts, other social services, program expenditures, other health department program expenditures. For you to see that that's kind of where a lot of your money is going. So, we have a lot of investment in the staff here, in the salary and fringe benefits. A lot of departments, that's the bulk of their expenditures. Like I said, social services is probably where you switch that you start to have a lot of programmatic expenditures, your public assistance, your food stamps, your foster care are all in there.
I want to talk to you about new positions that were requested. 6 new full-time positions were requested. We budgeted for 2 full-time positions. 4 part-time positions were requested, and all of those were budgeted. The new positions that were budgeted, first, the sheriff's office. He swapped a corrections officer for an identification officer. The identification officer will be responsible for increased workload related to permit applications, application investigations, and employment background investigations. That is $65,000 for that position, and that was pretty much an even exchange from what he cut to adding this new position. The health department is looking for a senior public health assistant. This is budgeted for $46,000. As I mentioned before, they've gone through an awful lot of grants in that department. With the grants comes a lot of administration work. This position frees up their current deputy that we raised someone's profile to deputy. They can't do a lot of deputy work because they're busy doing some of this lower level work and a lot of still COVID response. This will free up this person to serve as an actual deputy in that department. So we see that as a good investment. And that's at 46,000. For the part-time positions, we have the Parks Department, 1 maintenance mechanic and 1 cleaner. These were seasonal positions. As you know, we've had a hard time recruiting folks to work in a seasonal capacity at our parks. This would make them a permanent part-time position and then these positions are not just for Emerson Park, they are for all parks. Second one is for emergency management. He's asking for 1 part-time deputy fire emergency management services coordinator. So this person will focus on medical systems. If there are issues countywide, this person will plan and coordinate EMS training courses, EMS related planning, and represent county at the regional EMS council. So this is an identified need in that department. And then we have 1 position that we're converting from part-time to full-time. This is in the district attorney's office. This is somebody who is working in a full-time capacity. This has been ongoing for several years. We decided to formalize that to a full-time position. I've also listed additional investment in partner agencies and organizations. The Cayuga Economic Development Agency. For this budget, we have $375,000 and $75,000 increase from last year. Cayuga County Soil and Water Conservation District, we have a $700,000. That's a $25,000 increase from last year. And Cornell Cooperative Extension at $315,000, and that's a $65,000 increase. Does anyone want me to back up that slide? Some people are looking at this. It'll be in your binder as well. So we're also setting the stage for 2022, some initiatives in the county, information technology, IT, plans to restructure the department over 2022 and 2023 to transfer some contractual staff to county employee staff. So that's something that's been in the planning stages, just so you're aware. And also the health department, we're going to continue to provide additional resources for continued COVID-19 response. These are planning initiatives that will be coming up in the year. And in conclusion, so I feel this is a very responsible budget. I'm very happy to keep the tax levy flat at 0% increase. This provides for strategic capital organizational investments. A lot of times we look to those organizational investments as sort of the music and arts programs in the school district. And I'm happy that we're able to fund each one at a higher level this year. This also maintains adequate fund balance and reserves. And the next steps, we have to set the preliminary budget within 15 days of today. Today's meeting starts the clock on those 15 days. And Ways and Means workshops are going to meet November 9th, 16th, and 18th. I believe Keith Bettman, our Ways and Means chair, sent out, I know he sent a memo to department heads. I'm not sure if they went to the legislature or not.
Yes.
They did. So that would be in your inbox. So please check that out and make yourselves available to attend those, especially Ways and Means committee members.
And just a correction, it is the 8th,
ACA.
that 9th one.
Oh, I'm sorry, November
So
8th.
it's the 8th.
Okay, thanks. That's it. That's the presentation. Any questions on the presentation? Mr. Lattimore.
A statement of the 6% increase in the health insurance is probably one of the lower increases in health. I mean, I've seen a lot of 15% increases. It happens to be part of my line of work is so 6% is a pretty good rate. Do you know what we're taking in on internet sales? Is our sales tax broken down in regards to retail?
I don't know. I mean, I just have to check with the treasurer's office. They get the reports on that.
Now with the price of gasoline going up, sales tax there should be increased, right? So your preliminary projection is lower than last year.
Well, what we're budgeting in 22 is lower than what we're projecting for this year. This year is extremely high. You know, we obviously have November and December still to get the collections in. So we'll know even more after one more month is in. There were a lot of strange adjustments that happened last year. I think they're still doing a few of them, so I don't want to get too optimistic that what if we have a negative adjustment coming in the last quarter.
Now,
Yeah, but then this year's budget for sales tax is more than last year's budget.
Yes, definitely, yes.
now,
Yeah, 22 is, I mean, yeah.
Lynn, the prior boards, we put some money away, 4 million or in restricted. That's still there?
I didn't bring the reserve amounts with me, but I will have it at the other meetings. They have been used some. I mean, we did have some significant spending during the year. We did spend out of the reserves of some highway and some buildings, $900,000 this past year. So I will have the updated numbers from Mary Beth. I don't have that somewhere. I'll bring it to the
But
meeting.
didn't we put millions of dollars in restricted for maybe a possible new building or?
We had $5 million in there. We have spent some of it. So I will bring those balances with us to the next meetings.
Mr. Pinckney, then Mr. Patel.
CETA, 20% bump. What was the increase there? Position or?
Basically, we've given them the typical funding was, let me think here, go back to it. Can you show me slide 14?
Yes.
Additional investment in partner agencies. I have a different slide.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, so we typically, 300 was what we did last year. We did a few years ago, we were hitting 350. We took them back down to 250. We said, let's look at your reserves. I know you were involved in those conversations over time. So last year we gave them 300. So right now they're looking for a new executive director.
Mhm.
An executive director in that field is fetching far more than the current salary. In addition, they feel as though they've just outgrown that amount that we've been continuously giving them.
How were their reserves? Were they
Right.
equal to last year or up or?
No, they're not, because we've kind of forced them into a corner to spend down their reserves. So that can all be discussed when we do meet with the partner agencies. I think it's the last Ways and Means meetings, but they certainly will come prepared with all the information. But I did sit with them
Thank you.
in order to make this judgment. Mr. Patel.
Just to piggyback on what Mr. Lattimore said, we also saved a little bit of money in our dental insurance too. We had good performance in dental insurance, so we actually reduced the rates for the county. So that was a positive. And to piggyback on your reserve comment, Tim, this body can put $1 million or $2 million in the building reserve anytime we want to. If you want to make that motion anytime, I'll second it for you.
Well, I'd like to see the engineering reports that were received by Mr. Carr in regards to what we actually need. Will we restrict them one way?
We can put money in the reserve anytime though.
But I mean, maybe we
That's all. I'm
don't.
not gonna
Yeah.
debate it here with you, but
To go back to see this thing, I did happen to have somebody say that I wasn't for economic development, that I cut back on CETA, but in regards to Mr. Pinckney's concern is that I know that they had a very heavy reserve. And you're saying they'd spend it down? What did they spend it at? Do we know?
I don't have those notes in front of me.
I'd like to see what the spend was, whether or not it was necessary, whether or not it was really fruitful.
They will come to that last Ways and Means meeting, and then you can ask all those questions. Yes? Is it-
Except, I want to be clear, the Ways and Means budget meetings are to look at the current budget, to discuss that in terms of allocations and so on. Fund balance would be an example of something, but I don't want to take time at those budget hearings to talk about what someone's done in the past. I don't think that's particularly fruitful, and the timeline of this is very tight. So if that's a question that you need answered, I would ask that be asked outside the Ways and Means budget process, so that we don't take that time.
If you could
So
be so
I can
kind,
look at my notes
if
as
you
well.
could be so kind as to ask CETA as in regards to how they spent the reserves.
Yeah, I have some notes from our meeting too as well. So I can
Thank you.
provide you
Yeah,
with
sure.
a little bit of information. Additional questions or comments? Yes.
The transfer to the D fund, that 7 million, is that more than what we normally do? And are we anticipating doing road projects that will utilize all of those funds in the coming year?
We actually had cut it in 2021
Oh,
to 6.6 million. So we put it back to 7 million. So 7 is more our normal. There's been a few years we did 7.1 or 7.2. So we're putting it back to the normal. Last year, we actually spent part of the highway reserve so that we didn't have to reduce our payment. So we're going back to it coming from, the A fund, which kind of is below the property tax level, how we would want it to be. So we're not planning on spending the highway reserve at this point. That would be for an unknown thing that comes up. If we have something wash out suddenly or something like that. That's what we really want that reserve to be for.
I'm going to go with Mr. Dennison. He's been waiting, and then I'll go to Ms. Bailey and Mr. Peters. Hey, Andy, question?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe this was asked because we lost connection for a few minutes there, but how does the draw on the fund balance this year compared to what we draw on the last few years?
You want to? I think
Off the
it's
top of my head, I
typical.
do know last year was 1.1 million. And so now it's 2.1. But as we said, 800,000 of that is to build some roofs, which we didn't actually budget to do any of the work like that. There is a graph, that black one, black and red and gray bars. I don't know if you can see it, Andy, but on the screen, it does show historically what the draw on the different fund balances were. The black would be the A, the red is the road machinery, and the little grayish color is the highway draw.
And then last year, so if you go to slide 4, so typically we've taken less than $1 million from fund balance or just over $1 million. And so this year we're taking just about 2 million, but 800 of that is going to be used for new roofs. And so it's one-time capital expense. So that's why I'm comfortable taking the 2 million from the fund balance in this way. So technically, the amount we're using toward operations is the same as last year. So if you can see the last 2 bars of that tax levy slide, oh no, that's not the fund balance slide. I thought that was the, but anyways, it's very similar to last year without the 800,000.
Madam Chair.
Hold on just a second. Does that answer your question, Andy?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Daly?
Just for clarification, the zero property tax increase is really a 4.9% decrease to the taxpayers. That's kind of how this calculation is working. Is that 5.9? I mean,
Yes.
5.9, yes.
similar last
The
year.
tax rate, right? The
Right.
tax rate will decrease because there's been an increase in full market value.
I mean, last year we had 1.9% increase, but it was a 2.2% tax rate decrease. So this is even bigger. And I can just assume, I guess, that there were a number of requests that did not make it into your tentative budget that we can anticipate from various departments. Is that fair to say?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, not too many, but
No, I just wondered if
Yeah,
there
no,
were.
not so much.
Okay, all right, great.
we'll go to Mr. Peters. So we'll
Can I
leave it to that.
clarify that?
Sure.
Question. But to clarify, that one of the things we all need to be cautious of with our constituents is that in overall, the tax decreases we'll experience does not mean that when you get your tax bill, you will pay less taxes than you did this coming year than you did this year. Those are other factors in terms of the evaluation, the differences in equalization rates and so on. So an individual taxpayer may or may not see a 5.9% decrease.
Some may not.
Exactly, yeah. Now, it's going to be surprising, I suspect, if anyone sees an actual dollar increase, because 5.9 is a lot. But it's, well, we just need to be real cautious. I know I've gotten into difficulties in the past going with those numbers, and someone will get their bill and they say, "Whoa, wait, that's not what I got." What's the so? It's just a caution.
Legislator Petrus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Did you say we're getting our books today?
Yes,
Okay.
we have them here.
Off the top of your head, did you, it's okay, I can look in the book. But the libraries, I know along with CETA, that's always another.
I kept that steady.
Thank you.
It's the same as last year, I believe it's 31.5.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Fuller.
Just one question. Historically, we haven't tried to exceed the tax cap. We go down there on what 1% increase might actually be in real dollars. So what is that this year? So we know.
Well, 1% would be about $42,000 of the 42 million. So I mean, we are substantially below the tax cap. It's going to be at least 4%. I'm not thinking anybody wants to raise the taxes that high, so I think we'll be fine, that we don't have to worry.
It's 42,000 or 400.
400.
Sorry, 420.
Yeah.
For 1%.
Just one point of clarification. The Medicaid that you said is been guaranteed through, it was through March of 22. So we might see what we did this year, which is that federal increase had been extended through the rest of the year. That could happen again.
Absolutely, it could happen, or it could be a different amount of a benefit.
You
So-
budgeted the FMAP, the increase just through the end of March, but it could extend, and that would be a help to the budget as well.
Mr. Latimer?
Just for clarification, I know we have some newly elected members here. We'll congratulate them on their win. But would you, just for their, I know that there's some members that have been around budgetary things. I've seen one over there, but would you tell everybody what is mandatory we have to pay out of our budget? 80% is mandatory that we pay from the state feds, and that we only have so much play in our budget. Could you go through that?
I haven't looked at that recently. It was, I think, way higher than 80%. I think it was closer to 90%. But, clearly the bulk of the expenditures for the county, when you look at it, are probably in social services, which is the most mandated area. You have Medicaid, foster care, public assistance. We do receive reimbursement for those. But there's not, a lot, obviously a lot of our core services, the clerk's office, county attorney, legislature, are all mandated, health department, certain parts are mandated, some are elective, but, probation, the sheriff's department and highway, you have, control on how much you want to expand those services or not. But clearly those are things that our constituents are relying on heavily. So, we really are constricted, and I think I've always liked the graph that shows, with the fringe benefits and the salaries, most departments that are small departments, that's where all their expenses really are. They don't have a lot of fluff. They don't have a lot of extra expenditures in their budgets at all. Over the years, that's all gotten trimmed out. We've had some tight years, and we really have not added that back in. So it's not so easy to just contract, spending. It really comes down to personnel. That time. I mean, the one thing that we didn't really highlight on that I could mention, because it's it's not really capital, but it kind of is we have some investment in some IT infrastructure, cabling, networks. We did increase that, but it's hard to say if it's capital or not. And could be in different buildings and different places. So that's an area that we have included a little bit of extra spending also. We've been hearing that from, several different IT directors that the things that we have are at the end of their life and they're not controlled, covered by the maintenance agreements, and we're really at big risk, and everyone is relying on it even more so than ever. For working remote and things like that we can't be risking losing that stuff again and fail.
Thank you for that update.
Even though we do, if I could say, even though we do have mandated services, of course, in the budget meetings for oversight committees who are attending, yes, there's things we have to do that we must do, the state tells us to do. But, this was my workbook for the budget, and I've written on nearly every page. We went over every line to be sure that, to see what the increases are, why is there an increase, and really discuss it and plan for it. So we are very, we can't ignore, even though they're mandated, we must do it. We still have fiduciary responsibility to keep track of and be sure that the spending is appropriate in all lines. And so that was part of the process, and I appreciate everyone else. And I maybe have neglected to say the oversight chairs, but thank you to the oversight chairs who were in all of these meetings to go through line by line and talk this over. And that was a 2-month process to meet with every department to look over, what's changed, and then potentially what's coming down the pipe. And that's social services, for instance. We can learn about the foster care increases to preschool transportation. This is all really important information to know so that we can make informed decisions moving forward. But I just don't want folks to think because it's mandated 90% of the budget we're not looking at. We look at everything. So it's very important.
Did this tentative budget include any additional IT staff? Because we've been hearing about the conversion from contract to IT. It's come in a thoughtful, planned way, but does this include any of that?
It does not include any new positions. It does, that is all like in the works. We talked with,
Right.
there's nothing set in stone right now to make those changes.
Right, there should be funds in the budget to make changes, I guess is the best way. to
As the
say it.
year goes through.
But nothing has been changed, so we didn't change anything.
Yeah,
okay.
Nothing
Really
specific.
why it's not changed.
Madam Chair, we provided a kind of laundry list of possible projects to utilize the ARPA funds. You said that those funds aren't in this budget, but did any of the proposed projects make it into the budget? Because I know that some department has included them in their budgetary requests, and so I just kind of wanted to clarify.
Sure. For example, the roofs, that is something that's immediate. That's something that Gary Duckett wanted to have. We hadn't met, and we don't know the priorities of the legislature. So this is a have to. We have to maintain our buildings. So that's why it's taken out of the fund balance. We did not plan for example, the Dreams project from our clerk. So that's not in here. That's a project that is something that has been talked about quite a bit. It's to be left to our priorities as a legislature.
If those projects, once they're prioritized, can be added at a different time, you add the expense and then the revenue to it as we decide this. Is that how it will work?
Mr. Lattimore?
It seems to be that a labor shortage is increasing out there, and I just want to make sure that there's money for training and employee retention. Hopefully, we have something in there, and also on emergency management. There seems to be some crisis in the ambulance services in the towns. Do we have anything in there flexibility wise to maybe look at different concepts in case, public safety is our #1 issue, whether or not we can work on those issues?
You've been hanging out in my office.
Not recently. I don't think I've ever been invited, but
I was just having, I just had a meeting about that. That is the part-time position for EMO is specifically related to emergency medical services. So
to evaluate what we need out
Well, that's a step. So I've just recently had a conversation about evaluating the need.
It's good.
Thank you. Legislative Vitale.
Mr. Lattimore, you keep opening the door for me. So actually, in our budget meeting with the emergency management, I actually talked to Dale about that issue. We're seeing a lot of shortages in our ambulance and fire services in the towns. And what I asked him to do is to get the towns and the villages and everybody together and make a recommendation to us. We're not the experts in that area, and they're the ones that are on the ground doing it, and they know what's going on. And it'd be a lot more efficient for them to come to us with some kind of recommendation. Sometimes when we try to force things on people below us, we don't really always know what we're doing. So I would totally encourage people to encourage Dale to get those towns and villages together to give some recommendations or advice to the ladies.
On the other end of that, I did spend a session at NISAC with other county leaders talking about their models and how they're, improving their EMS services in their counties and what that looks like, and some kind of a menu of options. So that was a recent conversation I had, but I agree with you. We can't dictate that from us down. We need to work with them and build it up. So, any other questions about you've heard here today? I'm sure you're all eager to get your books. Yes.
Do the books include like the ask from departments in there? Did you always see that? or-
No. So that can come during the meetings. Yeah. So when the department heads will be here to answer questions, you'll have that information. And then you can decide. If this is what I present to you, now the work begins that you can assess and make your own recommendations, think about it, have discussions through the meetings led by Legislator Bettman. And then you decide if you're going to add something and where the money is going to come from. Are you going to increase the tax levy? Are you going to take it from the fund balance? Are you going to?
Just for clarification on that. There's like a request 2022 request line in our budget books for each individual line item. That's not in there this year.
No, it would be in there.
Oh, so it's
Some things are hard to see though, like, if it's in salaries, you only see totals. It may be hard to see that,
Right.
right.
but yeah, no, so like, yes, you definitely would see that some numbers, department requests had been changed. I would not say that we made a huge amount of changes. Last year was a very difficult budget and we had to, not only deny requests, but I was looking at my PowerPoint from the last year and unfunded a lot of positions. We had to do a lot of things. A lot of those positions, during the year, we reinstated some of them. So, they're not counted as new because we already took action during the year to put them in. So just keep that in mind. If you're looking at why have salaries sometimes gone up, Aileen didn't say she added anything. Well, maybe it got added during 21. So it's not a new request. We're looking at 21 to 22. What is new that someone's added to the department? So yeah, just keep that in mind. But yeah, Ryan, it would show,
In my delineated list, I think I of like 15. There were 2 things I didn't grant. So that's pretty good.
Madam Chair, I've seen an uptick in crime, and I'm just wondering whether, the sheriff department needs more road deputies or the DA, and I'd like to recognize our new circuit judge elect. And I'd like to see that department maybe make sure that everything's okay when you leave. Is there, well, we're gonna have to at least.
I think we can have that discussion during that session that you'll be invited to with Ways and Means, and you can discuss all of that with them at that time. I think that makes sense. Since I'm not giving any other department heads a chance and an opportunity to speak tonight, I don't want to be unfair.
Well, it's always nice to have somebody in the room who's done that versus just elected. So I would like to make sure that health insurance issues, that we have some knowledge in the room.
That's right. Please attend those meetings, because they will be at those meetings.
I'll try, but my schedule's awful busy.
Well, we need you. It's pretty important. Actually, I'm gonna
You
go to
haven't needed me
Andy,
for 40 more
Andy and then Tucker. Thanks for
Yeah,
waiting.
what, we're always waiting for Tim, but anyways, what was the total money budgeted for salary increases, not just the contractual, everything, I guess, including the extra? I mean, maybe this was talked about too, but like I said, we kind of blanked out there for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a total. I mean, when they're contractual ones, they kind of show in everybody's account. But I do have a provision for salary adjustment budgeted. That might be what you're referring to. So that would be for the pretty much non-bargaining and any other things that may be considered that have not been contractually agreed upon. And that's, I think off the top of my head, is 650. Definitely 600,000. So that is in the budget book. You need the bills. Yeah, we are gonna, just to let you know too, we are gonna be posting the PDF of the budget book on the website after this. So if you're not able to come down and get your book, you will be able to see it online.
And then Tucker Whitman.
I just want to comment that this budget looks like a great place to start. Looks like a pretty solid budget to start working with, and some effort was put into it. And I look forward to working on it in Ways and Means. And it sounds like Mr. Lattimore has a ton of questions to ask again in the appropriate committee.
Thank you for that, task, Chairman.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, one more.
Are you sure? I think when I was teaching, I would say a limit. I'd say 3 on topic questions. Yeah, I'm gonna allow this.
You are?
I'm gonna allow it.
I forgot.
Now I feel like I'm in the class.
Swing and a miss,
Tim, wasn't you making a motion? Yes, I thought that's what we're doing. If not, I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second, Madam Chair.
Oh, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Very, thank you. Thank you for tuning in this evening.
You're at your limit, Tim.
Wow. Give me